Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Chief Tidwell for being here and Budget Director Dixon, and I'm sure that any member that comes to participate in this morning's hearing is going to have very detailed questions for you, given the nature of the areas that we represent. So thank you for your budget proposal. It's a pleasure to have you in the leadership of your team. The health and vibrance of America's national forests are of particular interest to the American people, and as I said to the individual states that we represent. I believe the President's budget is a strong proposal that will enable the Forest Service to fulfill its motto of, quote, caring for the land and serving the people, end quote. This budget not only improves the health of our land, but also continues your predecessor's legacy of managing the forest to provide greater good to the greatest number of people. This proposal also demonstrates a strong commitment to the full range of national forest ecosystem services, including water quality improvement, recreational opportunity for the public, energy for the nation, wildlife habitat, and timber and non-timber forest products. But as you know, Chief, as we have discussed, there are particular issues that Washingtonians are worried about, and I'll look forward to bringing some of those in the Q&A part of this hearing today. Last year, the Pacific Northwest saw the number of acres destroyed by wildfire increased by 200% above the yearly average. In Washington, we experienced the worst wildfire in our history. In 24 hours, the Carlton complex burned 156,000 acres, and at its peak moved at 5 acres per second. It destroyed over 300 homes and accounted for 7% of the total acres destroyed by wildfires in the United States last year. Most of my Western colleagues have, in recent hearings, shared similar stories, and this is a problem we must confront immediately. In this respect, I want to commend you on your budget's three-pronged approach to address our nation's wildfire problem. Stable funding. This budget would ensure that the Forest Service would not have to transfer funding from its land management accounts to pay for fire suppression. And I support fixing the Fire Service fire transfer problem, which has placed enormous strain on its budget for more than a decade. And that's why I joined Senator Wyden and Crapo as original co-sponsors of the Wildfire Disaster Funding Act legislation that is endorsed by this budget. Second, land management. I also support provisions in this budget that would increase the land management activities that reduce fire risk, improve water quality, or quantity, I should say, and quality, and enhance carbon sequestration. And third, collaboration with private landowners. I appreciate your little collaboration just this morning on reviewing some of the activities that happened in the Carlton fire complex with one of our larger employers, Gebber's Farm, who were part of the response to that fire. I'm also excited about this third prong of your approach of engaging private landowners to take steps to reduce the risk posed by fires, and I'd like to share a few important facts that demonstrate why this collaboration is so important. Today, there are 46 million homes. That's 40% of all the houses in the U.S. are located in the wildland-urban interface. In the 1990s, that was only about 4% of homes were located in this interface. Fire experts cite housing development in the wildland-urban interface as the #1 reason firefighting costs have increased over the last 15 years. Only 16% of the wildland-urban interface has been developed. When 50% is developed, suppression costs could rise to a dramatic $4 to $5 billion annually. So given these facts, I'm particularly interested in discussing with the Forest Service efforts to improve the prescribed fire tool that is more accessible to private landowners. I learned reading your budget that wildfires helped the forest conditions on 70% of the acres they burned last year, and these were conditions the Forest Service planned to spend money to create. So the ARPS canopy model you developed in 2014, when deployed more broadly, will be a great example of using technology to help get reintroduced onto private land in a safe and effective manner. Although there is a great deal to be pleased about in this budget, there are a few items that are confusing and need further explanation. I'm pleased to see that you still plan to reduce hazardous fuels on 1.73 million acres in that wildland-urban interface. However, I'm concerned about your intention to treat fewer acres that are supported by the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So 70,000 communities are at risk of wildfire, but only 15,000 of them have a community wildfire protection plan. So it appears that you intend to prioritize projects in places where local officials have not reached an agreement on which treatments to use. So this seems inconsistent with the administration's emphasis on collaboration, so definitely want to talk to you about that. And similarly, I do not understand why the budget proposes a 6% cut in preparedness funding. $63 million. Your own fire budget analysis tool concluded that every dollar cut from preparedness funding results in an increase of $1.7 in cost of suppression. So I look forward to discussing those issues further. I want to just bring up in my statement the importance of recreation. The chairman just brought that up as well. I'm pleased that this year's budget builds on our recent track record of success of proposed modest increases of $2 million for recreation. Recreation on national forests contributes $13 billion to the economy and 194,000 jobs. They are created from the national forest system, and that's about 40% of the national forest contribution to our GDP. So the economic impact of recreation in our national forests is more than 4 times as large as our harvesting timber, which provides 42,000 jobs and creates $2.7 billion annually. So actually, timber harvesting is among the lowest. It ranks right around livestock grazing on national forests in terms of job impact. But truthfully, today, about 3% domestically produced timber comes from the national forest. So revitalizing and expanding recreation on our national forests is an initiative that senators on both sides of the aisle can get behind. And today, youth spend 50% less time in our natural areas than they did 20 years ago. So we certainly want to look at every way that we can to increase that. So I'll have some questions on that. Investment in recreation is an investment at which we can get a high return. The average age of Forest Service facility is 39 years old, and 1/3 of the facilities are more than 50 years old. While it makes sense that you removed over 2,300 of these facilities in 2014, I am pleased that the budget calls for significant investment of $33 million to address deferred maintenance. I'm pleased to note, if I'm reading your budget right, that about $1 million of that would be an investment specifically at Mount St. Helens National Monument. And I would also like to commend the President for a strong commitment to fully funding the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But in this budget, 6,000 acres of open space are lost each year to development. That's about 4 acres per minute. So the Forest Service's land and water conservation investment would permanently protect working forest lands and help maintain our rural jobs. I just want to also mention that people in my state expect public access to their land, so I'm especially pleased to see your proposal for $5 million Land and Water Conservation Fund initiatives focused on increasing public access. And I'm pleased to note that the President's budget process emphasizes on forest restoration. This is the most clearly highlighted by about $822 million investment in the Integrated Resource Restoration, or IRR, which would itself improve 20 watersheds. So I also appreciate the way the administration has viewed timber harvesting as a means of restoration. In this term alone, the President is bringing 25% increase in timber harvesting by focusing on timber harvesting that helps the forest. This proposal calls for National Forest to produce 3.2 billion board feet of timber by 2016. This is a 50% more timber than the 2.1 billion board feet of the Bush administration. So to me, this is how we can take care of the land and take care of people. And lastly, while I remain concerned about the sharp decline in the miles of stream that the Forest Service would restore under this budget proposal, I am excited about the increase in road decommissioning. The budget increases the miles of decommissioning to 2,000 miles in 2016, a 25% increase. And I just want to say I want to specifically thank Regional Forester Pena for working with me to secure a substantial increase in the legacy roads and trails for the state of Washington and reducing our quality of roads while reducing our quantity of roads while allowing the Forest Service to concentrate its limited resources on those roads has been greatly appreciated. So I'm sure we'll have a lot more to say, and our colleagues will, on subjects like the reauthorization of secure rural schools. As I said earlier, there's many things that my colleagues who are here this morning will have, I'm sure, for the Forest Service, because each of us represents states that have an integral relationship with the Forest Service. So again, thank you, and Mr. Dixon, Budget Director Dixon, for being here this morning.